And we had a celebration this week when everybody jumped on the bandwagon that we've been trumpeting toot toot for so long now about our favorite weasel, your friend and mine, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, a very interesting week after we recorded so much stuff in the last several days, and now things are kind of slowing down to the normal frantic pace. I forget when it was, but late last week, Jason Ellis spoke out. Jason Ellis is a skateboarder. He had a radio show on Sirius for years. He's been a podcaster, does a show with Tony Hawk. He's done MMA. People know who he is. And he got ripped off by Kast Media and Colin Thomson. He put up a video about it. Apparently other people who work there may have been helping Colin. Check out his video. Ask any questions. Anyone who has any questions, ask any of the show's questions because there's a lot going on here. But Jason Ellis spoke out. That got some attention. And then Theo Von, who is a comedian. Some of you who are around my age, I'm 43, may remember him from Road Rules years ago on MTV. But he's a comedian. He's got a pretty big podcast and a pretty big following, and he's out there. And
I saw he's got like 1 million Twitter followers, and probably 700, 800,000 of them are probably real, like normal with Twitter. But still, he's got a widespread audience and apparently some crossover.
And the thing is, with a lot of us who talk to an audience, we end up having more of a real Twitter following than a lot of people who, they're famous, but they don't really, there's no communication. It's just like, I'm famous, follow me. And clearly, based on the reaction Theo got to his video, that I encourage everyone to check out, and his podcast that I encourage everyone to check out, talking about Colin Thomson, Kast Media, as he put it, his show being defrauded. He says, I have to say this because this is so interesting, and we'll see what this ties into. Because as we are recording today, this is the day before the PodcastOne stock goes public. And I have been informed that PodcastOne's Rob Ellen, as well as Colin Thomson, are both now claiming that Colin never had a guaranteed job with PodcastOne. That he was never going to be a part of this. Which ignores kind of what their press statements indicated and ignores what I was told. But now they're denying that it was ever a thing. Theo Von in his video says flat out he was told that by them. And they defended him the same way they did in that interview that Rob Ellen did with Podcast Business Journal.
Well, I watched the Theo Von video on YouTube and also saw so many of the comments from people who apparently listen to his and our show. That's why there's some crossover audience, because they were all saying the same thing. They were saying, my God, this is almost the identical story that Theo Von is telling, that Cornette and Last have been telling. He was given the same deal, the same treatment, the same issues started happening. And then the same money started being owed in the exact same way. And then the same thing was told, as was told to us, as was presented to us. It was almost identical. Of course, he worded it differently, but it's the identical chain of events that everybody has gotten, pretty much, that we've spoken to, that have dealt with Colin Thomson, Kast Media, Rob Ellen, LiveOne, PodcastOne. And what's that? Theo even mentioned, we're on first name basis now because we've both been fucked together. What's the crooked lawyer's name?
Oh, Neil Sacker.
Neil Sacker, mentioned him too. And that
he worked for Harvey Weinstein. He's
yes.
like telling people all about that.
Yes. And
Miramax.
Apparently Theo Von didn't think any more of that than we did, as far as not being an endorsement of an attorney. And so he's telling the exact same story because they've done this to so many different people in so many different fields, big and small, as we mentioned. Caretaking parents and comedians and wrestling pseudo celebrities, or whatever the case. We're all in the same boat with these crooks that are trying to do and are going to do an IPO on Wall Street tomorrow for this company that they're apparently building with fraud, broken promises, misappropriation, and Elmer's glue.
Yeah, the stock is going to be going public. And
we got to keep a running tally on this thing, don't we?
We certainly do. Because again, you would assume if Colin Thomson is selling the assets of Kast Media that Kast Media actually has, which I guess would only be the original productions produced and executive produced and owned by Colin Thomson, that Colin will be getting a good amount of stock with this deal, a good amount of money. So it'll be very interesting. Very interesting.
I wonder if his will be good right away or if he has to wait for 2 years like he was wanting us to wait.
Well, I think we'll find that out. I think we're going to find out a lot of things in very short order. We're going to find out what happens when Colin Thomson gets his ass kicked in arbitration. We're going to find out what happens when Colin Thomson gets sued from a variety of people. We're going to find out what happens when Colin Thomson has to deal with the reality that PodcastOne's going to eventually cut ties.
It's not a reality, it's an eventuality.
It's that he's gotten too toxic because we're all speaking out. They thought we were all going to shut up. Again, to refresh everyone from the email chain, you can go back. There's a playlist now for it on YouTube. We were told that our money was gone, that Colin's going to go bankrupt and we'll get nothing, or we have to sign a new deal with PodcastOne for worse terms that could be changed by them, apparently, based on the wording of the email, but terms that weren't good for us. We would get 1/3 of the money that they claim they owe us. They also owe us accounting. And they've sent us various sets of numbers at different times. So they claim they owe us the amount that they would give us 1/3 of in cash, 1/3 of over 2 years in an unknown source, not defined, and 1/3 in pre-IPO stock in PodcastOne. We rejected all of this. We said, just give us our money. And the strong arm tactics began. There were 2 different sets of them. It was talk to PodcastOne. Colin kept doing it every email. I rejected that we were going to do this. Every email, talk to them, talk to them, talk to them. Rob Ellen tries to go behind my back, gets in touch with Jim. Same thing. Talk to my team.
You don't want to talk to me.
Talk to my team. Talk to my team. Every email, talk to my gut tells me you should talk to my team.
Well, he ought to be eating some of those fucking athletic greens he used to sell us the spots for because his gut's wrong.
And then the intimidation was, we expect you to keep confidentiality for the contract that we don't have with you. We think you should know you'll be in line for $10 to $20 million in damages from a variety of parties if you do anything to mess up this deal.
Don't say anything out in public, is what we were told, so
I would strongly advise you not to say anything. My other favorite thing still is Rob Ellen from PodcastOne, or LiveOne. The SEC doesn't take too kindly to these kind of threats. My threat was to call the SEC.
Yeah, no, that's like Saturday night's all right for fighting, except when you do and then you get fired.
Saturday night's all right for firing.
The SEC doesn't take kindly to threats of people calling them. That's why we tweeted them.
That's why our lawyer called them.
But real briefly, just refresh me. I'm trying to think of the dozens and dozens and many, many shows that have taken this deal publicly, that have gone over to whatever the company these people are trying to put together, instead of just going off the grid completely or speaking out. We know Sarah Silverman hadn't had a new podcast in a couple months, poor thing. And I guess Penn Jillette has been run over to Patreon. Theo Von said something. Jason Ellis said something. We've said a number of things. And we've heard of that one podcast, that one show that did migrate over because they were owed well over $1 million and figured they could get something so they could pay their staff.
Or buy a truck or something.
Or buy a truck or whatever. Nobody's knocking this door down is what I'm saying. They got nothing. They're getting nothing. Kast Media was a joke run by a crook. Was I plain enough on that? I goddamn double dog dare you. Sue me just to give me something to fucking talk about, motherfucker. You fucking crooks, you pieces of shit. You sleep in the street. You drink Thunderbird and smell like elderberries.
You've taken it too far.
I fly upon you.
You've gone too far now. Theo Von said it great. I loved what he said. I think the exact quote was, I think he's the Bernie Madoff of podcasting.
Yeah, because he made off with our money.
Because it is like a Ponzi scheme. When you rob Peter to pay Paul, that's called a Ponzi scheme.
And here's another thing. Who does Paul know? Because Paul's always the one getting paid. Peter's always the one getting robbed. Why couldn't it be even? Why couldn't every once in a while you rob Paul and pay Peter back? How come Peter gets the dick end of things?
That's just the way people say it. You could feel free to say it the other way. Be different. Stand out.
Well, goddamn, if I'm the only one, then I'm battling a goddamn giant tide. We need a movement.
Well, a movement has started, and the shows that were ripped off and defrauded by Kast Media are speaking out. They're not afraid, and we're all going to do, I think I can speak on behalf of Arcadian Vanguard and Jim Cornette, anything we could do to help any of the other shows, we're there. The fact that we're not letting this get by is a good thing.
Yeah, and let me just say one more thing to Colin Thomson, because you're younger than I am, Colin, but I'm in pretty good fucking health, and I'll guarantee you that if you get on any form of social media for the rest of your life, I'll know, and other people will too, because I'm going to start a movement, and that movement's going to finish when I'm squatting over your face and I have that movement in your mouth.
Well, hold on now. I don't know if everyone wants to join a movement that has that as the ultimate.
No, that'll be just my private movement. But one way or another, this guy can do what he wants in the world of business. But if he's on any kind of social media, or his name is, unless he changes his name to Izzy Frobusher, then I will let people know how they can express their feelings about what he's done for the rest of my life. So I hope he's going to become a monk in a monastery somewhere. It'll probably be more peaceful for him.
It makes me happy, and I think it makes the other victims of Kast happy, that he's not going to be able to outrun this. This will follow him. But I also think it makes us all happy that you could say the same thing about that hairdo of his. He'll never be able to outrun the multiple photos of him with that ridiculous fucking hair.
You know what? He looks so much like little Pip Sabian that people on Twitter were saying, aha! See, Cornette, you've been knocking him for 4 years. He assumed a fake identity just to get revenge. It's been Pip Sabian all along.
Not to go too far off, but Kip Sabian, I've seen a couple of things with him recently. Maybe worth a second look at some point.
What the have they figured out some way to surgically enhance his fucking legs so he's a foot taller?
No, and I don't think it's them. I think it's him. I think he's figured out a little bit more of a personality so he stands out. But also, actually, I saw him on the British pre-show, and I thought he was really, really good on that as one of the people, one of the talking heads, one of the people sitting next to Renee. But anyway, back to Colin Thomson. He's not going to outrun this. Again, he stole all of our money for a long time. It's not like he just suddenly, like, oh, all of a sudden the money's all gone. No, it took time, and he was fucking around with the books for a while. We want the accounting. And eventually, he made it so that the only option, by his choice, because he had plenty of time to give anyone a heads up, the only option was, I go bankrupt, or you take this deal. I get nothing, or you save my ass. That's what that is. He didn't realize we had an option, which was go fuck your mother. And that's
but then you showed me a picture of her, and I said, no, even 6 figures, that ain't worth it.
Well, it's 6 figures for us, and it's 6 figures for others. It's 7 figures for others. We're talking millions of dollars that are gone. Where was that money appropriated? We will find out.
Do you think him and this other weasel Ellen are going to get one of those rounds of applause when they foist this bad paper out at the stock exchange tomorrow as we speak here now? It'll be, by the time people hear this, it will have happened. So we'll be keeping track of the value of the stock, where it starts and where it ends up.
And apparently they're spinning off the Slacker Radio. Someone told me, I got to check into this. That's going to be the next stock that they spin off from the company that owes all the money to the fucking Sound Exchange. I don't know what to think of all this.
Is spinning off kind of like fighting off? Is it, they fight off? Will they spin off? Or should they just sit on it and spin in one place?
It's like Maude and the Jeffersons worked, Fish didn't. Sometimes it works. GE split in half. That worked.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
That's
Poor
easy.
Abe Vigoda. God damn it.
Well, he's dead now.
Well, he's dead. You know what? He looked like he was 90 when he was 60.
That's the problem. Everyone said that for like 40 years of his life. You look like an old man.
And then, Ernie Borgnine was 96 when he died. We kept waiting for him to die.
Why?
Not because we hated Ernie Borgnine, but it seemed like he had been old for so long, he should be even older than that.
Mickey Rooney was pretty old, wasn't he?
Mickey Rooney, my God, he fossilized before he quit breathing.
Apparently he was a real fucking maniac. I read something recently. Dana Carvey was talking about working on Mickey Rooney's sitcom that he had briefly in the early 80s. Like Dana Carvey, and no one remembers it because it lasted a very short period of time. It was Mickey Rooney with Dana Carvey, either as his son or his roommate. I forget what it was. But he said Mickey Rooney every single day to set would be like, I was the biggest star in Hollywood. I slept with everyone. And then he lived another 30 years or whatever.
And then he was sitting there with his like 8th wife doing fucking insurance commercials where she was really kind of shaking his jowls from the back of his neck so that it looked like his mouth was moving.
It's crazy seeing Shatner on like the old Twilight Zone episodes and realizing like he could be in the next commercial.
Oh yeah, again, he's 90 fucking 4 and still doing first run television shows and major motion pictures and sitcoms, commercials, endorsements. The fuck and look at William Shatner and look at George Burns when they were the same age, 94 years old. What the fuck happened to poor George? He goddamn
cigars.
Well, but it looked like he shrunk. He was dehydrated. They desiccated him. It took all the moisture out of him. He was half as tall as he was when he was 50 years old. He was half the weight.
Well, Shatner's pretty plump.
You're saying Shatner stretched out all of his wrinkles.
You know, remember what he looked like on TJ Hooker? Do you think him and Bruno shared the same wig maker?
Oh, when Bruno had the perm, very good. Yeah, because let's face it, that was obviously artificially enhanced at that point. But at the same point, think about this. George Burns, a man of his time, a manly man. He never had work done. He never had any kind of cosmetic surgery or whatever. Now, William Shatner can afford the best. He looks pretty good, but maybe he's had so many facelifts, they'd have enough left over to make a midget. And maybe if he didn't wear that high-necked shirt, you would see nipples on his neck. We don't know what he's had done to enhance himself. George was just out there like George was. After Gracie died in 64, he said, fuck it. I'm just going to fuck every fucking starlet in Hollywood on my reputation. I'm not going to do anything about my appearance.
I haven't heard that about George Burns. You heard that he fucked every starlet?
I'm thinking he was always on those award shows and on the arm of some bevy of beauties.
On the award show, they put those people together and shushed them out. They just pushed them right onto the stage.
But from the time he was 65 to the time he was maybe 80, 82, somewhere about there, he had to have a little fucking comedy relief every now and then, didn't he? One would think.
Me and Lana Turner.
And Judy Garland, I got her first pills.
All right, well, this was the Kast Media segment.
Yeah, fuck you, Colin. We're coming for your ass.
Yeah, fuck you, Colin.
Yeah.
Fuck your whole family, Colin. Give us our money, Colin. Dirtbag. Allegedly.
Allegedly. All this is alleged.
And by the way, once again, if you hear this, it has been cleared by our legal counsel. If you got a problem with that, call him directly. Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084.
That's right.